Good morning. The Senate Governmental Organization Committee will come to order as a subcommittee. We'll move first to file item number 2. That's SB 1047. Senator Weiner, good morning. Feel free to begin when you're ready.
It is good to hang out with the two of you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair. I'm here today to present Senate Bill 1047 to promote AI innovation and AI safety. This is a pro-safety and pro-innovation bill. This bill was heard in Judiciary Committee, and in that committee we had a colloquy with the chair, and then we subsequently agreed to amendments that have been inserted into the bill. I just want to indicate what those amendments are. Clarifying the definition of covered guidance, authorizing the Frontier Model Division to issue guidance to help developers determine if a model is covered or qualifies for a limited duty exemption, clarifying the authority of the Judicial Council, clarifying the interaction of good faith errors and unreasonable reliance on a limited duty exemption, clarifying that punitive damages are included under the Attorney General damages provision, strengthening whistleblower processes, further defining further clarifying the definition of artificial intelligence safety incident, and deleting the provision on joint and several liability. And I want to note that the reason we deleted the joint and several liability provision is that there was no need to provide that in the bill because existing law already provides for joint and several liability. So we didn't want the bill to somehow imply that we were trying to override existing joint and several liability law. So it should be clear, it's not our intent to remove joint and several liability from the equation, but just to make clear that existing joint and several liability law will apply and is sufficient. This bill, colleagues, will promote responsible development of what we call frontier artificial intelligence models, in addition to supporting competition and innovation. By frontier AI model, we mean extremely large and powerful models that will exist soon and that will have incredible benefits for society and also pose significant risks. California needs to support and invest in the responsible development of AI and support this incredible innovations. And we want our state to remain at the cutting edge of AI innovation. At the same time, some of the most respected scientists, engineers, and business leaders around in the AI field, including two of the most cited machine learning researchers of all time, researchers who support this legislation, have repeatedly warned policymakers that failure to take appropriate precautions could have severe consequences for technology to succeed and being adopted widely. Potential users have to trust that the product is safe. AI developers in California have already taken important first steps in pioneering safe development practices. However, we can't afford to be complacent. With Congress, unfortunately, paralyzed on this issue, as with all technology issues, I want to just be clear, we keep hearing, oh, let Congress do it. Well, that would be great if Congress would do it. But after all these years and bipartisan support, Congress has failed to act on social media, has failed to act on data privacy. After many years of bipartisan support, I hope that changes. It hasn't. Unless Congress acts with a strong AI safety law, and a regulation or executive order, unfortunately, is not enough. That can be revoked in a heartbeat and does not have the full binding effect of a law. Until that happens, California, which is absolutely the epicenter of AI innovation, needs to lead. SB 1047 sets out clear standards for developers of these extremely large and powerful models, and that if they meet the bill's threshold of 10 to the 26th flop, or a system of similar capability, which will cost over $100 million to train, then they have to take precautions ahead of time to evaluate for safety risks. and then take actions to mitigate those risks if they identify significant risks. We know that as with a lot of bills, we will hear from opposition that this is going to stifle innovation, that it will do no such thing. And I represent the absolute epicenter of AI innovation, and I would never want to undermine that innovation. But we have to take action to promote safety. Indeed, a number of startup AI companies are supporting this legislation, including a startup called, yes.
Excuse me, Senator, I have to get to another committee to present a bill. Vice Chair Wilk will take over the meeting.
Great. Thank you. Good luck. Indeed, a number of startups are supporting this legislation, including a startup called Imbue, which would be subject to this legislation. They've submitted a letter unqualifiedly supporting the legislation. Again, if for companies that have covered models under this bill, and if a company violates this law by not conducting the evaluation or not taking required mitigations, the Attorney General can hold the developer accountable. But this is not just about safety, it's also about promoting innovation. And so SB 1047 creates a new public cloud computing cluster called CalCompute that will conduct research into the safe and secure deployment of large-scale AI models while allowing smaller startups, researchers, and community groups to participate in that development. So we are spreading the ability of people to innovate. The bill creates an advisory council to advocate for and support safe and secure open source AI development, and requires cloud computing companies and frontier model developers to provide transparent pricing and avoid price discrimination. The bill creates whistleblower protections so that frontline technologists can feel safe and secure in reporting potential problems. I want to just really stress that we've seen incredible things coming out of the AI world. A model recently created a new antibiotic, and that's just one example of some of the amazing things that these AI models are doing. We also know that in 2022, an AI model generated tens of thousands of novel toxins as dangerous as the most toxic nerve agents previously discovered. So we need to enhance the good and evaluate and mitigate the bad. The time to act is now. We will probably hear from some opposition. Let's just wait more and figure it out. This is accelerating now, and let's not make the mistakes we made with data privacy and social media, where by the time we get around to doing anything, the horse is way out of the barn and people are being harmed. I respectfully ask for an aye vote. With me today to testify are Terry Oley, the director of the Economic Security Project, one of our sponsors, and Sunny Gandhi, the Vice President of Political Affairs of Encode Justice, also a sponsor.
Great. Thank you, Senator. So under committee rules, each speaker gets 2 minutes. And whenever you're ready, identify yourself and proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Terry Oley, the Director of Economic Security California Action and one of the 3 co-sponsors of the bill. I'm here to speak specifically about how SB 1047 addresses market concentration in the AI industry by requiring fair and transparent pricing and, importantly, establishing a publicly owned and operated computing cluster called CalCompute to democratize access to this very critical piece of AI infrastructure. Computing capacity is the most important factor in enabling or limiting AI development. Computing capacity is extremely expensive and currently gatekept by a handful of companies. They determine who gets to use it and therefore what gets created. This has led to a world where cutting-edge AI research primarily benefits the bottom line of a handful of private entities rather than the common good. Recently, a UK minister for competitive markets raised significant concern that an interconnected web of more than 90 AI partnerships and strategic investments are actually tied back to just 6 tech giants: Google, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, and the chips maker NVIDIA. California academics have also sounded the alarm. While Meta recently announced plans to buy 350,000 specialized computer chips necessary for AI research, Stanford's key AI research lab has only 68 of their own chips. CalCompute addresses this problem head-on. It broadens access to this powerful technology so academics and other researchers can develop large-scale AI systems for the public good, not just commercial interests. California actually has a history of making important public investments that have yielded life-changing benefits to our citizens. We've pioneered investment in stem cell research, and we're home to world-class publicly funded labs like Lawrence Livermore in Berkeley. CalCompute builds on this entrepreneurial spirit, creating space for innovations that benefit humanity broadly, even if they're not easily monetizable. With so much potential to improve the lives of those who live in the Golden State, we cannot let AI's future be driven solely by corporate profits. California has a history of making important public investments where it counts, and it's time to do so again. I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Sunny Gandhi. I am the Vice President of Political Affairs at ENCO Justice, one of 3 co-sponsors of SB 1047. ENCO Justice is a leading global youth movement for safe, equitable AI with 1,000 members across every inhabited continent. ENCO Justice was created to give young people a voice in shaping how AI systems affect our future. Since then, we've advised stakeholders ranging from the White House on their AI Bill of Rights to the European Union for their AI Act. With Congress now failing to take action on this issue, we look to California, a state renowned for its bold leadership and commitment to equity, to lead the way. We're at a critical juncture in the history of AI development. Progress is accelerating at an incomprehensible pace. The potential benefits of AI, from revolutionizing healthcare to combating climate change, are immense. But at the same time, the risks posed by advanced AI systems are real and urgent, like facilitating biological weapons design or enabling large-scale cyber attacks. Lawmakers have a moral imperative to enable the safe and responsible development of this technology. SB 1047 does just that. It requires the developers of frontier AI systems to test their models for potential hazards, implement common sense safety practices, and report their findings to the government. This legislation will help ensure that AI development in California is safe, secure, and equitable. The incredible amount of technological innovation that exists in California has made it the focal point of a global audience. The decisions made by leaders like yourselves will shape the lives of billions of people, and young people will bear the brunt of those consequences, which will echo for generations to come. We have been let down time and time again on government inaction on issues like climate change, gun violence, and mental health. I refuse to let the same happen with AI. Thank you so much for your time. For the millions of young people I represent by standing here today, I urge your support on SB 1047.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll take Me Too testimony. If anybody here in support, your name, organization if you have one, and a simple Me Too.
Mr. Chair and members, Leanne Pratton with Stratton Price, representing Center for AI Safety Action Fund, one of the co-sponsors of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Ari Kagan. I am a founder of generative AI startup and advising on this bill, and I urge your support for the bill.
Thank you.
Good morning, Landon Klein from the Future of Life Institute, and support.
Thank you. At this point, do we have any speakers, primary speakers in opposition? I know you know the rules, but it's 2 minutes. Well, you could have 4 actually if you're the only one.
That's okay. I don't think I'm going to need that. I'm filling in for my colleague who's caught in another committee right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Ben Golumbek with the California Chamber of Commerce, respectfully in opposition to SB 1047. To be clear, we share the author's goal of ensuring the safe and responsible development of AI. However, we have concerns over issues that would preclude us from getting there in a manner that still fosters innovation. Fundamentally, our primary concerns boil down to workability issues and the consequences thereof. We're concerned that the bill dictates compliance with a number of vague and impractical, if not technically infeasible, requirements as drafted. As described in further detail in our letter, these include, for example, terms and standards used for covered models, positive safety determinations, and hazardous capability, all of which lend to incredible uncertainty for members and lie at the core of SB 1047's framework. We're also concerned that the bill focuses exclusively on developer liability for failing to block any and all conceivably harmful uses of a model, even in scenarios where third parties effectively jailbreak the model. Such uncertainty, the cost of compliance, and significant liability exposure, as well as other issues around the impact on open source development and computing cluster requirements, inevitably discourage technological innovation in our economy. We're concerned that the bill could in fact hamstring businesses from developing the very AI technologies that could protect Californians from dangerous models developed in territories beyond California's control. And lastly, given the clearly global nature of the technology, it's critical that we ensure consistency nationally and refrain from adding more confusion to an already fragmenting AI regulatory landscape in the U.S. It's imperative that we not lose sight of the fact that the federal government not only should act in this space, but is already acting in this space. We think that the states should let NIST's AI Safety Institute complete its work first, after which safety and security protocols tied to those standards could be better considered at a state level. For those and other reasons outlined in our letter, and I'll just emphasize that the majority of our members that we've heard from, and we have nearly 15,000 members here in the state of California, are many of our small business members, in particular, obviously, those in the Bay Area and Los Angeles, where a lot of the AI startup culture is taking place. We must unfortunately oppose SB 1047 at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any Me Too testimony in opposition? Again, your name, organization if you have one, and a simple Me Too.
Mr. Chair, Dylan Hoffman on behalf of TechNet, respectfully opposed to the bill. Liner comments with the chamber. Look forward to working on amendments. Appreciate the senator's willingness to work on this.
Great. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll pull it back to committee for questions, comments, concerns. Senator Archuleta, what a surprise. Yes.
Good. Good morning, Senator. The biggest concern that I think all of us have is safety and security. And in this new world by the developers that'll be coming into it, are they taking this to the next level when it comes to security? That's my main thing, because the AG is obviously very concerned about how to mandate the rules that we're accepting here. That if anyone goes outside the law or any outside the protection of the communities that they serve, that's my concern.
So thank you for that question. It's my concern as well, and we think this bill really captures that concern and addresses it. We know that there is a lot. There are items required in this bill that there are companies that are already doing that. The different kinds of testing, what we call red teaming, where you have someone else come in and try to basically go against your model to try to change it into something problematic, and seeing if that works. These are established protocols and systems that companies already use. We want to make sure that they're all doing it and all doing it in a reasonable way. I also want to be clear, we could have gone much further in this law, and some would like us to. For example, there are some who think that we should require licensing and pre-approval by government before a model can be deployed. We did not do that in this bill. We're not looking to micromanage what the companies are doing. We simply want them to engage in basic safety testing, safety evaluation. And if it shows, oh, this model may shut down the grid, then they should take steps to prevent that from happening. We're not asking for perfection. There's no perfection. You can't reduce risk to zero, but we think that they can absolutely take steps to reduce that risk and minimize it. So we think we've taken a good balanced approach here, and I think we will. And California is in a position, given who we are and how much innovation is happening here, to have a real impact on safety.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I understand what you want to do. And honestly, for a lot of us, I think a lot of this is over our heads. I abstained in judice because of that. But I've been really now reading a lot on AI. And there's so many benefits, but there's also so many dangers. So I'm going to go up on your bill today because, like you said, the federal government's not doing it. Somebody's got to do it. And I really would rather err on the side of safety than innovation, just because I view this as potentially very dangerous. So you'll have my vote today.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Reading the crowd, you made some people happy in the room for sure. Anybody else wishing to?
No, I've already spoken.
You've already spoken. Anybody else? Okay, so we're down to that point. Senator, I really appreciate what you've been able to do on this bill and working this bill. Obviously, we've got to have guardrails, and I really appreciate the amendments that you've taken and where we are today. And I'm going to recommend an aye vote. And with that, would you like to close?
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Yep, that's right. So with that, when we get a quorum, we will we'll vote on this, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Senator Bradford, would you like to do your bill, file item number 20, SB 1403? Can he, he's got to go, Senator Wilkes got to go to another meeting. So we'll do that one first. Thank you. This is file item number 21, SB 1495.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm going to be going to another committee to present a bill. I'm not going to be out there goofing off as Senator Nilo would lead you to believe. If anybody was in committee yesterday. All right. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members. I'm pleased to present SB 1495, which would allow alcohol licensees to sponsor events or purchase advertising space from the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles. The cemetery is currently a permanent retail on sale license holder with a Type 88 license, which doesn't allow for this arrangement. This narrow tight house exemption would help generate important revenues for the care, maintenance, and improvement of the cemetery grounds and its ability to continue to host cultural events. For those of you who may not be, why would somebody text me in the middle of my presentation anyway? If you're not familiar with this facility, it is the final resting place of tons of people: Douglas Fairbanks, Lauren Bacall, Humphrey Bogart, all the way to the Ramon Brothers and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. So it's an iconic place. They like to do events there and raise money. So this would allow it to continue. The legislature has granted numerous property exceptions from the state restrictions due to the unique circumstances that they face. Given the precedents and the Hollywood Forever's unique operations is both a functioning cemetery as well as a cultural space, a state level tight house exemption is appropriate. The specificity of the Type 88 license assures this exemption for the Type 88 license alone and both targeted and simplistic. There's no known opposition. And with me today is Mr. G.V. Ayers to testify on behalf of Hollywood Forever.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Please
Thank
begin.
you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is G.V. Ayers. I represent Hollywood Forever, the sponsors of SB 1495. Appreciate Mr. Lopez's thoughtful analysis, and we're grateful to Senator Wilk for authoring the bill and to the committee for your consideration today. Hollywood Forever Cemetery, as Senator Wilk has stated, is an iconic Los Angeles landmark and institution. It fulfills its fundamental purpose of honoring the dead, and Hollywood Forever also has become a center of culture and social activity for the living. It hosts more than 90 events a year, and such as outdoor screenings of feature films and Hollywood classics, indoor performances of music and literature and art and other productions, the largest Dia de los Muertos celebration in the United States, attracting more than 35,000 people at times, and then obviously family memorials and celebrations as well. 6 years ago, this committee and the legislature authorized ABC to issue a special on-sale license for retail license for the cemetery in connection with these events. And now we believe it is time that we can go a step further because sponsorship of these events by other ABC licensees is very important and can help to offset the funds, the cost of these events, but also help to contribute to the upkeep and care of the cemetery. And so we are seeking this exemption here through Senator Wilkes' bill. We thank you so much and encourage your aye vote on the bill.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here in support? Seeing none. Anybody in opposition? Also seeing none, we'll bring the discussion back to the members. Anybody have any?
I'll move it Appropriate time.
Appropriate time. We have we'll have a motion by Archuleta. Senator Wilk, before you close, is there any capacity to be interred in this place? Sounds like it's a pretty cool place to spend the eternity.
Yeah, Michael Jackson, Liz Taylor, Mickey Rooney. I'm sure we can find a place for you
Okay.
and your beautiful bride Mary.
Thank you very much for that. So we
And your
will-
kids and your 13 grandkids. Yeah, we may not have space for the family there.
Okay. With that, appreciate the presentation. Would you like to close? That was a beautiful
respectfully ask
close.
for your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna kind of moving around here since we don't have a quorum. But we're lucky to have Senator Ochoa Bogue here, and she's going to present file item number 17. That's SB 1224. Okay. Good morning, Senator. Feel free to begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Let me start by thanking the committee staff for working with my office to improve this bill. I'm happy to take the committee's amendments. Senate Bill 1224 will allow Riverside County Fairgrounds in India to sell liquor without requiring the grounds to maintain a fully operational kitchen. The fair is home to various events, including the National Date Festival that brings in hundreds of thousands of people every year. While the county owns the fairgrounds, they retained a new management company last July. When the new company attempted to take ownership of the liquor license that was issued in 2008, they found that the license requirements changed because the fair no longer offered off-track betting on site. Without the off-track betting, the fair must meet the requirement of a bona fide eating place, despite the fact that the site has not had to meet this requirement in the past and currently lacks the required kitchen and refrigeration to qualify. As amended, SB 1224 will allow the fair to serve alcohol on site as long as food service is available to the public at all times during the events. This change ensures that the fair can continue operating as it has for almost 2 decades, allowing the community to benefit from the substantial revenue that the fair events contribute to the local economy. Here to testify on behalf of Riverside County is Bob Giroux. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'd like to thank Mr. Lopez for his work with the ABC.
Microphones, gentlemen.
The Riverside County Fair has evolved with the advent of food trucks. We do, as Senator Bogue, we do serve several different events in the county, including the International Date Festival. I would like to say that this happens to be a district bill for 4 senators, all 4 senators that represent the County of Riverside: Senator Bogue, Senator Roth, Senator Sayarto, and Senator Padilla. We would appreciate your support and ask for your aye vote.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the room wishing to testify in support of this bill? Seeing none. Anybody wishing to testify against the bill? Seeing none, we're going to pull it back to the committee.
Move the bill.
Senator Alvarado Gil.
I am a big fan of county fairs, and I'm wondering what do I need to do to get an invitation to the Date Festival. So Ochoa Bogue, I'm going to leave that in your hands, and 3 of our colleagues that also represent that area. But when appropriate, I would move the bill, unless my colleague here would like to.
No,
Okay,
fine.
all right, thank you.
Do it.
We've got that changed. Okay, seeing no other comments, thank you very much for presenting. Would you like to close, please?
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Great, thank you. Okay, Senator Wahab apparently is on her way. Second floor. Senator Padilla has a bill. Good. You ready? Okay, we're going to move to file item number 15, SB 990. That's Senator Padilla. Your timing is impeccable. Please feel free to start when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm happy to present SB 990. I want to begin by accepting the committee's amendments and thank the committee staff for working with our office. Last year, as we well know, California suffered a record number of catastrophic natural disasters, which will only increase, unfortunately, often in frequency and intensity as climate change worsens. Though climate disasters will touch many Californians, recent studies indicate that the LGBTQ plus community are disproportionately impacted by disasters, both because of pre-existing marginalization and discriminatory disaster response policies. LGBTQ plus persons, particularly those of colors, face worse displacement conditions compared to cisgender heterosexual individuals. Bias in disaster response programs, failure to recognize unique LGBT family structures, barriers to obtaining proper ID, and anti-LGBTQ plus practices at some disaster relief services provided by faith-based organizations that at some points actually constructively deny services can all compound to heighten the risks that LGBT communities face during a disaster. State and federal agencies continue to lack a clear strategy on how to integrate LGBTQ plus people into disaster preparedness planning and emergency response. In order to equitably serve the LGBTQ plus community, we must consult directly with advocates, organizations, researchers, and ensure that their needs are being met. SB 990 would require that the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, update the state emergency plan to include proposed policies and best practices for local governments and non-governmental entities to equitably serve these communities. To craft these policies, Cal OES would be required to coordinate directly with representatives of the LGBTQ plus community. State policies and guidelines should reflect the needs of all Californians. It will help Cal EOS further understand how to serve vulnerable populations when disaster strikes. Here today to testify is Josephine Figueroa, representing California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, and Craig Polcipher with Equality California.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Josephine Figueroa, Deputy Commissioner and Legislative Director for the Department of Insurance under the leadership of Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara. First, I'd like to thank Senator Padilla for authoring this important measure. Insurance Commissioner Lara is a proud co-sponsor of Senate Bill 990. SB 990 would require the Office of Emergency Services on or before January 1st of 2027 to update the state emergency plan to include proposed policy and best practices for local government and non-governmental entities to equally serve LGBTQ plus communities during an emergency or natural disaster. As you all know, California has suffered a record number of catastrophic natural disasters in recent years, and it is predicted that to only increase in frequency and intensity as climate change worsens. Though climate disasters have impacted all Californians, unfortunately, LGBTQ plus individuals are disproportionately impacted by disasters because of pre-existing marginalization. LGBTQ plus individuals are also overrepresented in at-risk populations for whom disasters are more likely to bring death, displacement, and other negative health and socioeconomic impacts. Insurance Commissioner Lara has traveled the state during and after natural and other disasters and has witnessed the human tragedy and suffering endured by California as a result of these events. We must be inclusive in all populations in our disaster response efforts, and this bill is an important step in that direction. On behalf of Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, I ask for your aye vote.
Anybody else wish to testify in support? Anybody wishing to testify in opposition? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee. Any comments, questions? Seeing none?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Senator Chobo.
Thank you, Senator Dodd. So I'm kind of curious because I was reading the bill and I was kind of curious as to how does this differ from any other community that would be considered underrepresented, and it also has issues, pre-existing issues such as individuals with English language learners, so undocumented. the unhoused. What else do we have that is that would be considered underrepresented? People with disabilities. All of these other groups that would be considered marginalized or have pre-existing conditions that are, you know, disproportionately affecting those type of communities. So I'm kind of curious as to why specifically LGBTQ and not something. I'm surprised that we don't already have something to include everybody that would be considered, you know, underrepresented or marginalized with pre-existing conditions prior to a disaster. And why don't we have somebody in general and just specific to, and maybe there is. I mean, you could educate me on this because I don't know. I was just kind of curious as to everybody else that would be considered marginalized as well.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thank you for the question. Correct. I think that the Office of Emergency Services in their preparatory documents and planning always seek to try to respond to the whole totality of California's population. And they do take into account and they do plan to be able to be educated and responsive to all the many myriad different elements of our culture and society. The point of the bill is that the LGBTQ community, with some of the unique attributes that that community has, should also be incorporated into that planning, and that's the point of the bill.
So, in other words, the current system that we have takes care of every other marginalized community or has stipulations on how to address their particular, but not the LGBTQ.
Yeah, the office is always seeking to strive to better and more responsibly and effectively respond to the needs of the total population of California and everyone's unique circumstances. Sometimes that means people who are physically or developmentally impaired. That means people with unique factors that contribute to them being unsheltered or in the situation they're in. Means people with certain dispositions that make it harder to provide assistance. Geography, there's a lot of things, but whether it's cultural competency, language, disabilities, and others, the whole point of the office is our best disaster response is one that responds to everyone. And so the point of the bill is to make sure that this element is considered in the planning.
Thank you. Anybody else? Senator Archuleta.
Yes, thank you for presenting the bill, Senator. My question is, have we had issues that brought this forward? Fire department, police departments, first responders, that they discriminated in some way or another, or turned their backs on a specific community at all? I'm just curious. It seems that, you know, all human life is human life. And in the purpose of the bill, I would imagine you feel that someone was pushed aside or an entire community pushed aside. Enlighten me with that, please.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, thank you for the question. First, and I can make this available, I'm going to cite to a recent study in 2023 from the University of California, Irvine, along with Yale University and the Claremont Colleges from 2023 called Amplified Harm, LGBTQ plus Disaster Displacement. And I'll just briefly read into the record some of the key findings of that study by those esteemed institutions. One, national LGBTQ plus disaster displacement is nearly 2 times higher than cisgender heterosexual displacement. LGBTQ plus individuals face worse displacement conditions compared to cisgender heterosexual individuals, highest among LGBTQ plus persons of color. Although there is a lot of state level variation, LGBTQ plus displacement is higher than cisgender heterosexual displacement in most states. And displacement is potentially related to overall state level positions on LGBTQ civil rights, meaning states with more anti-LGBTQ policies generally have higher displacement during disasters, etc. So the inverse is true here in California. We try to strive for the opposite.
Thank you for the explanation. Discrimination is discrimination, no doubt. So when appropriate, I'm going to move the bill.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So with that, I'm not seeing anybody. Oh, Senator Rubio.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I think it's an important bill, and I think that every time we put an emphasis on subgroups, like, you know, like you cited some displacement and data here, I mean, it's clearly needed and it's important. So I commend you for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So at the appropriate time, when we get a quorum, we'll be voting on your bill. We really appreciate your presentation. Thank you.
At that time, I'd ask for an aye vote, and thank you, sir.
Thank you for that beautiful close without being asked. All right. So Senator Wahab, I just want to, for the record, note that your good colleague, Senator Becker, has allowed you to go first because you're chairing the Public Safety Committee. So good morning and welcome. We're going to start, I think, with file item number 4, SB 984. Good morning.
Chair and colleagues and members of the public, I want to thank the committee members as well as committee members' staff for working with us on this particular bill. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge, the amount of work on this bill. The bill in print reflects amendments that came directly from the committee, and I do accept them. Project labor agreements ensure the state's investments in public infrastructure are protected from costly delays and protects employees on these projects. PLAs accomplish these goals without burdening the Division of Labor Standards enforcement. Project labor agreements provide greater opportunity to prioritize inclusion of women, veterans, members of indigenous tribes, BIPOC individuals, including also folks that have historically been incarcerated. These are working class jobs that actually have middle class income. And it's incredibly important to continue to prioritize the union workforce. SB 984 would require the Department of Toxic Substance Control, Department of General Services, the California State University, and the California courts to identify 3 major construction projects that will be governed by a PLA. Beginning in 2029, SB 984 will also require these agencies to report the use of PLAs, advancement of community benefits goals, and apprenticeships on these projects. I would like to introduce 2 witnesses, Jeremy Smith of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, as well as Sarah Phlox, the California Labor Federation. Chair, when you're ready.
Senator and Mr. Smith, we're going to do a quorum here. Can we call the roll, please?
Dodd,
Here.
Dodd here. Wilk, Alvarado Gill here. Alvarado Gill here. Archuleta
Here.
Archuleta here. Ashby, Bradford, Glazer, Jones, Nguyen, Ochobo here. Ochobo here. Padilla, Padilla here. Portantino, Roth, Roth here. Portantino here. Roth here. Rubio, Rubio present. Ciardo, Smallwood Cuevas. Smallwood Cuevas here.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With your permission, I talked to the next speaker. If I go over my 2 minutes just for like 30 seconds and cut into her time, she said she was okay with that.
That's fine.
Okay, just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Jeremy Smith here on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council of California, the proud sponsors of this bill. We'd also like to echo Senator Hobbs' thank you to you, Mr. Chair, and your great committee staff for helping us work through the amendments that you all requested and that we agreed to, and I think it makes it a better bill. So thank you for that. Project labor agreements have proven to be a market-based project efficiency tool that continually have proven to ensure on-time, on-budget results for construction projects, as well to ensure that local workers are getting the jobs created by local tax investments. Any qualified contractor can bid to work under a PLA on a public project. That's state law. Public Contract Code Section 2500 prohibits discrimination on all the usual things that we all see: race and origin, sexual orientation, but also on whether or not you as a worker or a contractor are in a union or signatory to a collective bargaining agreement. That's in Public Contract Code Section 2500. Many agreements in the public sector, however, contain special accommodations to make it easier for contractors that do not ordinarily work under collective bargaining agreements to participate on the project. For example, some agreements will permit contractors to bring a certain number of their existing employees onto the work site without requiring them to go through different rigmarole. Furthermore, as I mentioned, Senate Bill 984 is going to be tucked in under Public Contract Code Section 2500, which prohibits discrimination and requires all qualified contractors to be able to bid on these projects under a PLA. It's entirely then up to a contractor to choose whether to work under a PLA. Some public agencies have negotiated innovative programs within PLAs to assist small businesses, including minority and women-owned contractors, in preparing bids and complying with the various legal requirements. Just in the last few years, the following privately funded projects have been built under PLA: the Kings Arena, the Warriors Arena, the Anaheim Hockey Team Arena. Anything anybody sees at Disneyland is under a PLA. The LA Rams Stadium, the Clipper Stadium. Furthermore, germane to this bill, here are some public PLAs: high-speed rail, the cities of Anaheim, Long Beach, Pico Rivera, Echo Park, and dozens of others. the Sacramento County Airport, LA Community College District, LAUSD, the City of LA, the County of LA, DWP in LA, the Metropolitan Water District. BART, the Trans Bay Center down in San Francisco, which is going to provide 5.7 million work hours in only the first phase. One more, and then I'll finish up, is the San Diego County Water Authority. It's illustrative on how these instruments can be honed and shaped to answer for particular community special needs. This PLA has the following definition of targeted workers, the type of workers required to be on projects carried out by the San Diego County Water Authority. A targeted worker is a worker who is a veteran, an apprentice with less than 50% of the work hours required for completion, no high school diploma or GED, is homeless, is a former foster youth, is a custodial single parent, is experiencing protracted unemployment, is a current recipient of government or cash, food, or assistance benefits, has documented income at or below 100% of the federal poverty level, is formerly incarcerated, or is a graduate of an apprenticeship readiness program. These are required workers to be on this project, and PLAs often mimic something along those lines. They're all negotiated individually, and we want to make sure local workers who are from certain zip codes sometimes are on these projects. Those are put into PLAs. We think this is good for the state. It's obviously good for private industry and many other public agencies in the state. We urge your aye vote today. Thank you.
Next speaker. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members, Sarah Phlox, the California Labor Federation, also in strong support of the bill. The federal government is investing billions of dollars into infrastructure as part of their federal bills. And as part of that, the president has made project labor agreements a centerpiece. And he's made it a centerpiece because it is a proven tool to make sure that projects are high quality, that they come in on time and on budget, and create good union jobs. Not only that, but they are a tool to make sure that you save money. There are projects in New York, for example, recent projects that created over 2,000 good union jobs and saved over $300 million. It's also an incredibly effective tool to open the door for good union construction careers for women, people of color, and veterans. There are community benefits embedded into project labor agreements that make sure we have equitable access and that all of these new jobs that are created, good middle-class career jobs, are open to a range of diverse Californians. So this is a proven tool. It's been used across the country. It's something the federal government has put at the center of their investments in infrastructure and in other construction projects. And we think this is a very small step forward and hope will go further as the state adopts this as an important tool. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the 125,000 members of the State Association of Electrical Workers, the 55,000 members of the California Coalition of Utility Employees, the 40,000 members of the California State Pipe Trades Council, the 30,000 members of the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the Elevator Constructors Union, urging an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. James Thurlow, actor of the California State Council of Laborers. Want to thank the author for her leadership on this. So we strongly support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in favor? See none. Any opposition? Please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Felipe Fuentes here on behalf of the Associated General Contractors of California. Unfortunately, in opposition to this measure, the measure mandating project labor agreements on specified state public works. We have two chief concerns, and I want to be really sort of very pronounced at the beginning of this. We're not opposed to working with labor. In fact, the Associated General Contractors of California is made up of over 1,000 members, of which 2/3 are members that have master labor agreements with partners like the Teamsters, the carpenters, the laborers, and the cement masons. And 1/3 is open shop. But those open shop members also have to go through apprenticeship programs. So all of the safeguards, all of the well-intended things that were spoken to for a second here, we also herald and are very proud of it. Our concern is primarily that we're putting the cart before the horse here. Project labor agreements are negotiated by the owners and labor, leaving the contractor out of the process. And the contractor, with due respect, I think has the best expertise on how it is that projects can be delivered. And so for that sort of process reason, we have a strong objection to the measure. There are also considerations when you do this sort of thing. Contract administration, for example, if the fiscal committees ahead of this bill are able to do their analysis, I think they'll understand that administering a project labor agreement is a costly measure. Also, core worker provisions are affected. As I mentioned at the outset here, AGC has a partnership with labor. And when we take a job on, we take those labor partners with us. A project labor agreement, unfortunately, will likely supersede master labor agreements, in which case our partnerships, those workforce that we bring to projects, will have to be replaced and or substituted for different labor partners, all of which creates additional risk for the contractor. We then have to factor all of that when we're bidding, and it's not to say that it won't work, but we can't say with any guarantee that it'll be seamless as it is with the union partners that we have previously worked with and have selected. AGC is over 100 years old, as I mentioned, with nearly 1,000 members, and we very much pride ourselves in building California's infrastructure, be it heavy civil, highways and freeways, vertical construction, commercial, or even the replacement here that's taking place with the state capitol. So we would be okay with a measure like this if there was a change in process, but also a consideration for what it is that we do, which is work with our labor partners. For those reasons, we're opposed to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Fuentes. Next speaker.
Good morning, excuse me, Chair and members. My name is Tracy Stevens on behalf of the Construction Employers Association, which is comprised of over 100 of the largest union-affiliated builders. We build the hospitals, the schools, the everything huge. So also in respectful opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Senators. Richard Markison, representing more than 12,000 journey workers and apprentices, members of the Western Electrical Contractors Association, the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors of California, the California chapters of the American Fire Sprinkler Association, and the Independent Roofing Contractors of California were opposed to this discriminatory, costly measure and government mandated project labor agreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name's Ian Vanderlinden. Like Richard said, this bill blatantly discriminates against non-union contractors, raises costs, and I oppose it. Thank you.
Yep. We're just going to go me too from here on in. Okay. State your name, your affiliation, and whether you support or obviously.
My name is Cameron Thomas. I'm part of the Western Electrical Contractors Association, and I oppose it.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Derek Brodell. I'm a member of WICA as well, and I oppose.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Matthew Thomas, and I am also strongly opposed to SB 984. Thank you.
Jason Drager, I'm opposed.
Good morning, Matthew S.B.No with the Associated Builders and Contractors Northern California chapter. We are strongly opposed.
Good morning, Michelle Rubalcava on behalf of 80,000 workers of the Associated Builders and Contractors of California, also opposed.
Thank you.
Chair and author Don Wilcox with the California Conference of Carpenters and respectful opposition.
Ben Golombek on behalf of the Cal Chamber in opposition.
Good morning, Chair, members. Ron Roulette, NorCal Carpenters Union, oppose.
Thank you. Okay, seeing the end of that, we're going to turn it back to our members. Anybody wishing to question or comment? Down here. Senator Smallwood Cuevas, yours first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the author for bringing this bill. I think it's long overdue that we have a standard and a model for how we invest our public tax dollars. I come from a place where it's hard for a person from South Central Los Angeles to step into a career in the construction trades, particularly if you're Black and particularly if you're a woman. And this is a model that I have seen evolve over years, being utilized at some of the largest transit agencies, some of the largest medical centers, largest school districts, where we are basically contracting for our values. And the values is not that a worker gets a job and then they're out of work and then they come back and then they're out of work, but we're creating a pathway for workers to come into a construction project, build something, and then move with that union to the next project and the next project. And I say it all the time because I lived it, and it's the most profound thing that I've witnessed in my life is to see a worker go from living in their car to buying a home in Los Angeles County and doing it using this standard of investing our dollars in the way that we build infrastructure. And our state is strapped, and far too many of our residents are hurting. And this creates the work that then builds the pathways out of poverty. And when you say zip codes, you can target to the zip code that needs the most help and bring folks out of poverty into opportunity. So I'm usually not one to give speeches, so I don't have a question, but I want to say how how excited I am and how exciting it is for us to be at this moment of really saying this is how we're going to build California. And we're going to do it by building infrastructure and moving anti-poverty methods that actually can be measured. So I am happy to support this. I do have a question, though,
Yes.
now that I've come to it. And that question is, in the policy, you talk about the local hiring and disadvantaged workers. What is the metrics of tracking and monitoring that you will be doing with your in this policy by bringing employers and unions and community together to build these pathways into these jobs? How will you track to see, how we are moving the needle in terms of who's getting access to these jobs and how these particular communities are benefiting from these projects that are in their backyard?
Definitely. Well, I'm going to ask one of my technical witnesses to come up. I do want to highlight that this bill specifically requires a report to come out. One of the things that I know you and I have talked about this a lot is that we want to make sure that we are elevating people and, where they start, where they end up, both as apprentices and working on these projects, but then also just foundationally in the communities. And so I think that it's incredibly important that we identify this. I'll let Jeremy actually answer in regards to the specific data metrics. Jeremy, with the chair's
Through the
permission.
chair.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you. Good question, Senator. We have lots of examples up and down the state in different cities where working with local governments, contractors, developers on a particular project, there's reporting that happens back to, in this case, in the example, the Sacramento Kings Arena, back to the city. And then there was a report afterwards that showed in that PLA we were hiring down to the zip code. It showed where different workers came from. So there's plenty of examples about a reporting mechanism that the state can implement as this bill moves forward and gets signed into law. The next step might be how do we craft something along those lines. But there's lots of examples to do that.
I appreciate that. And I remember just looking at an article last week about a rail corridor project in my district in LA County, where typically women are so small you can't measure on a project. But there was data, a metrics and a data report out that showed that women held 7% of that project over 3 years. And it's just phenomenal to be able to have that kind of a receipt. And I think this model will allow the state to do that really sort of surgical tracking that we need to do to see who's being lifted up and how they're being lifted up in this model. So thank you for that.
And just for the
I'm
record,
happy to move the bill when there's
thank you.
opportunity, Mr. Chair.
For the record, there is a report required in this bill. So, okay, Senator Alvarado Gill.
Thank you. Senator Wahab, I just have some questions about just kind of like the nuts and bolts of the PLAs in this proposal. So can you tell me a little bit about who would be negotiating these PLAs? Is it all the construction unions have a seat at the table? Like who's making those decisions?
Right now, and Jeremy, if you would like to also come, usually when a PLA is discussed, it is discussed with the general contractor that is selected, and then also a lot of the unions are at the table. I know that one of the concerns that the carpenters have is maybe that they're going to be excluded because they do not belong to the Building Trades Council at this moment. That is not the case. I want to make sure that this is an inclusive process. And Jeremy, if you would like to add a little bit more on.
For example, this building we're in right now was built under a project labor agreement. Setting aside our concerns with the elevators in this place, don't blame the elevator constructors for that. That's not their fault. They just they built what was designed. We negotiated, this was negotiated with the Department of General Services. So the individual state agency will negotiate with, I would imagine, the state building trades or some entity, if it's a building in a specific city, a local entity on the project labor agreement locally.
I also want to highlight that in my conversations with the carpenters, which I have full respect for and been collaborative, I want to make sure that as this bill moves along, is that we have language that also makes sure that it's a all-inclusive effort. So I do just want to highlight that for the record.
Okay. So the language isn't in there now, but this is something that you're working with the carpenters on?
I think that they have concerns about the language, but it is, again, inclusive as is, but we're going to continue to make sure that we are addressing concerns as we move this bill forward.
So who makes the decision in terms of who has a place at the negotiating table for the PLAs? Is that the individual contractor that wins the bid? Or is that the trades union?
It's the local entity. Well, I'll just use a local PLA as an example. The city council, county board brings in the players, the developer, maybe contractors who are going to bid, and they talk together about what the PLA is going to look like. Sometimes it's done before the contracts are bid. Sometimes it's done with the developer. We're at the table. Anybody on local PLAs, it's a little easier. Any local union that is in an area is welcome to come to the negotiating table. And at the back of a PLA, there's all the different signatures of the entities, and it's all the different labor unions or contractors who are going to be on the project.
So what happens in the situation where there's disagreement? Like how does that impact the timeline for development? So just for example, coming in as a new legislator, I've asked the question, we're here in the swing space. Am I going to see an opportunity to be in the Capitol building, which historically has held legislators? And I've been answered with perhaps not in my lifetime. So help me to understand the negotiation of the PLA, how the timelines are impacted when there's disagreement.
Well, that the work across the streets also being under a PLA, those were done before the contracts went out to bid.
Okay. Okay.
And then in most contracts, there's PLAs. There's also a agreed to protocol for dealing with disputes on the job.
Okay.
If there's some kind of dispute between crafts or some sort
Safeguards.
of worker issue, that's dealt with an arbitration proceeding that is decided in the PLA before the contract goes out to bid.
And so does that halt construction? Does that halt the project from being completed in the timeline that was initially estimated?
Under Public Contract Code 2500, which is where this bill is going right under 2504, one of the requirements, I didn't read them because I didn't have time. One of the requirements of all public PLAs is to have a no strike, no lockout, no work stoppage requirement in the PLA.
Okay. Even if there's disagreement between the trade unions in terms of
even, let's just use the Sacramento Kings Arena as an example. Okay. Say we're building that right now, and there's a strike or a lockout down there.
Right.
That does not affect this project.
Okay.
Those are two distinct things. And so in each PLA, and in each public PLA, you have a no strike, no lockout provision under current law now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So you said that the negotiations happen before the contract goes to bid.
Correct.
So what's the timeline between the time that a request for proposals is released to the time that the entity needs to make a decision on that? So what's that timeline to be able to dispute?
I think, every PLA is different. Every project is different. It's hard for me to guess what that timeline would be.
Average? the PLAs that you've been involved in?
I mean, I think that before the request for proposals go out, there's a project labor agreement on a project. So
And I want to highlight, just from a city perspective, as a former city council member, we had projects that had PLAs and we had projects that did not have PLAs. The city of Hayward that I represented at the time is south of Oakland, right? And Oakland is considered the large city in the East Bay. And Hayward is not necessarily the large city, it's a small to medium sized city. And the agreements with the developers and the property owners at that time, whether there was a PLA or not, sometimes the property owner could not finish a project, right?
Right.
On their own without a unionized workforce, without, maybe something didn't go through, maybe permits were held, maybe they changed plans or their financials didn't come through. There's a lot of things that affect a particular project. It's not always just PLAs. And the goal of a PLA, especially for the workforce, is to get a job and get going, right?
Right.
They're not interested in delaying anything. And, you know, as he mentioned, there's a lot of safeguards in there to kind of keep it moving forward.
All right, Mr. Fuentes, do you want to respond to what you've heard here?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, I want to thank Mr. Smith for pointing out sort of how it is that local governments typically enjoy project labor agreements. And as a recovering city councilman in Los Angeles, I can tell you that the contractor is not at the table when this is negotiated. The owner, the agency, they decide what it is that they want in the project labor agreement. And typically what happens is you'll have scoping hearings and meetings, and it'll take a year or so before the bid gets to the street. But the point and the process problem that we have is that the contractor isn't at the table. We don't have the opportunity to negotiate those terms and what it is that will be used on that job. It's after the fact that if we are interested in bidding in that job, then this is what we have to live with. And again, it's a process point. We would prefer to be at the table.
Thank you.
So I'm hearing that all project labor agreements are negotiated separately. Is there a unwritten rule or a written rule of the process? I'm going to use the term, the rigmarole of how project labor agreements are applied within the state of California, or is it a distinct beast in each different?
It is very much distinct because also the projects differ, right? The localities differ, the workforce differs, and much more. So in more rural areas, obviously, it's a different process than, you know, in, let's say, the metro areas. You know, one of the efforts of what we're trying to do as a caucus and as a group, and people who are trying to make sure that, you know, we do the American thing and put Americans to work, is to have a more uniform project, right? But we also want to respect the work of the different departments, the general contractors, and the circumstance of the environments as it is. So there is not one uniform process, but it also falls into usually what's typically done.
Okay. So this is my last question, Chair. So you mentioned rural communities, and I represent small cities and rural communities, and we typically get the crumbs of what's left to PLAs and access to good working jobs. And so when I talk to my constituents and they share these concerns, particularly covering the Eastern Sierras, they're seeing workers come in from the Bay Area to what they call home, and local workforce not being able to qualify for these jobs. They're also seeing out-of-state workers coming in and working in their backyards. And so I have, you know, constituents that some that are part of labor unions, some that are not, but simply want to work and live and take care of their families and communities within, you know, where they live and where they grew up. So, excuse me, I respect that, you know, the Bay Area, Southern California, Los Angeles, San Diego, some of these bigger projects, Sacramento, that we've seen these PLAs work. I still don't think that that represents all of California. And when I think of California, for me, being born and raised here, and how I've seen us grow, we are still looking at the rural areas of California, the eastern and the northern areas of California, less than the highly populated voter center areas. So I am concerned about that. I also learned recently about PLAs my constituents that talked about their support for prevailing wage, and they understand that the fairness of prevailing wage and looking for those good paying jobs. But the hourly amount for union fringe benefits comes off of non-union worker hourly compensation. So that I was concerned about. So what happens if the workers that are non-union workers, what happens if they never receive or never qualify for union health benefits or other union retirement benefits? What happens to that money that has been taken off of their paychecks?
Yeah, and I don't believe that to be 100% accurate. And I want to say that you and I share the same concerns. Primarily, even in the Bay Area, the amount of projects that we have going on, they're not all unionized, right? And we know this. And so again, this bill is to identify roughly 3 projects within a given time frame, and it's a foot in the door to make sure that all people are paid fairly. In particular, one of the concerns I have, including in the Bay Area, because I am a Bay Area representative, is that the non-union contractors have been recruiting from Middle America. And let's say $18 to $25 an hour is a lot for Middle America, but it's not necessarily a lot for the Bay Area or California across the board, right? My goal and the work that I try to do is to make sure that every single person, regardless of union or non-union, and I've said this in other committees, I want to make sure that they're paid fairly and with dignity. And I agree with a lot of the carpenters' language in regards to making sure that people have health care, making sure people are paid fairly, and so much more. And that's what we're trying to identify also in the community benefits agreement, because not all people are treated equally, and that needs to stop. And I'll let Jeremy talk about some of the more detailed pieces of your question, but we are on the same page. I don't care that you're from a northern or rural part of California or you're from a big city. I represent a medium to small city, and I still want those individuals, whether they're documented, undocumented, whether they have a prison record or they don't have a prison record, whether they're aging or healthy. I want them all to be paid fairly and treated with dignity. And Jeremy, if you would like to answer
Well,
anything else.
Can I just interject here? The question was asked, if they don't get the insurance, where do the premiums that are paid in go to? That's the question we need to have answered, and then we're going to move this hearing on.
Thank you.
First, that
Retirement as well. Yes.
correct.
Thank you.
Most PLAs have a mechanism for contractors who may be non-union to bring in a number of their own workers onto the project, whatever it be. That's negotiated locally with PLA to PLA. There's no industry standard for that number of sort of workers that won't be dispatched out of a hiring hall being brought in by a contractor who employs some of their own forces. I would say that most of the time, those workers, once they are shown what they're going to make, as opposed to what they have been making in terms of benefits and healthcare and wages, tend to want to be organized into our unions and do get access to their healthcare benefits they've earned and pension, things they didn't have before.
Senator Chobo.
Yeah, I'm not sure that answered the question. I think the question that we need to hear and have on record is, in order to be able to, say, receive the retirement benefits that companies that are not considered part of the labor union groups that are paying into the system in order to work in these projects, because they can, there's an allotment for them to be able to bid in it. But these benefits that they receive, such as retirement, that these companies are paying in on behalf of their personal employees into the system, into the project labor agreement as a whole, those retirements, in order for them to retrieve those benefits, what is a time frame before they have to be vested into a project in order for them to retrieve those benefits, in order to be able to get them?
We just fundamentally disagree with the point that the other side is saying in that situation. We believe that those benefits are given to those workers, and project labor agreements
The
differ.
question is, how long do you have to be vested into project or into the union work in order to retrieve those?
And project labor agreements are negotiated one-off, and so each project labor agreement is different. I can't speak to an industry standard about the time somebody would have to be vested. I would say it's it just depends on each project labor agreement.
And what is the average based on your experience? Because you're an experienced person in these projects. What is the average that you have to be vested in order to retrieve those, for those companies to be able to get that, or the benefit, or actually the employees be able to retrieve those benefits?
Having not negotiated PLA myself, I'm just a humble lobbyist here. For all of you, I don't have an average number for you. I can get that for you after committee and follow up with both you and Senator Alvarado Gil on that answer.
Those benefits. Okay. So it is my understanding, based on conversations that I've had on the other side, that in order for these folks that to receive those benefits that have been put in, many of the times on the average, you have to be vested into the system for about 5 years before they're able to get that. By that time, there's most projects don't last 5 years, so they don't get those benefits. So it's actually dissuades people from bidding on those projects or working on those projects, or it costs them more money.
I want to address that too. And Senator, you're absolutely right. Usually it is. However, I also want to say that project labor agreements, with or without, the contractors who also subcontract out, the employee works for that particular group, whether it is for, any of the building trades groups or anything like that. So that's who they're originally connected with, very similar to local cities or counties. They belong to that particular union, and the union negotiates with that particular agency their terms and their benefits and their things like that, which we're doing here in this building as well with the workforce here. So I really do want to highlight there's some nuances of how this is structured across the board. It's not just direct employee to individual project, right? It is I'm gonna say a middleman to some degree in everything that we're discussing. So I just want to highlight that.
All right. Any other questions? Senator Bradford.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I misunderstood. Did you say the project going across the street to Capitol renovations is under a project labor agreement similar to this?
I did.
Okay, and I think you and Senator Smallwood spoke to greater diversity, and this has been a bone of contention for me for the last 3 years, the lack of diversity on that project. And 3.5 years, I've seen 2 African Americans working on that. So if project labor agreements are supposed to bring greater diversity, hiring from the community, it's not demonstrated on a $500 million project that's going on. I have those in my district. SoFi, Intuit, both of those in the heart of my district use project labor agreements. And they did hire from the immediate community, and they had greater diversity. They had people of color as well as women. It ain't happening across the street. So that needs to be fixed, because we can't keep making these promises of jobs and opportunities, and they don't exist. And I have that conversation with leadership here and with the governor's office, the lack of diversity on a $500 million project that's at our state capital, and no one seems to care about the lack of diversity on that project.
Senator Wilk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I may represent LA County and San Bernardino County that people think of as urban, but it's very rural, and there's a lack of opportunity for our members. I got another bill going forward that would require a study to see if we could qualify for a California State University. We have over 1 million people, and we have 2 community colleges. South Dakota, which has less than 1 million, has 7 public colleges and universities. So that's one pathway that doesn't exist for my constituents. And this is another. My first year here, I actually created a new water agency in the Santa Clarita Valley. We did a workforce community agreement. It has worked out very well and ensured that we hired our local veterans, that we hired locals from the community. Up in the Antelope Valley, we have numerous government agencies that have these agreements, and it allows these people to work, have a career, and have mortgage paying jobs. So I thought the first iteration of your bill was a little overly ambitious, but with the hard work of the chair and the committees and telling it down a little bit, I'm going to be happy to support your bill today.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none. Senator, as you know, I had some serious concerns with the statewide PLA requirement. The amendments that were made last week or a little bit before that lessen those concerns. I do still think that the opponents bring up some good points. While I'll be voting for the bill today, I encourage you to work with the opponents to see if there are some amendments going forward that will alleviate their concerns. With that, Senator, would you like to close?
Yes, I really do appreciate the conversation about this, and I want to highlight that it is about that ambition, right? You know, we are Americans. We want to move this country forward. These are government projects. These are government taxpayers' dollars, and at the same time, we want to set a standard of what does it mean to have a good-paying job with benefits, with retirement support and healthcare, and all the things that we want. And I will tell you for myself, I've worked both non-union jobs and union jobs, and I've been nothing but supportive of union jobs after it was unionized. It's incredibly important, and I want to highlight that this is to identify 3 projects moving forward. The report also allows us to study what we're looking at and seeing if this is beneficial to the state of California, which I do believe it is. And this is going to move the state of California forward. And I do commit not only to the chair, but then also to the members here that spoke in opposition that I'm more than happy to work with anybody and everybody. So thank you. And I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion on SB 984. The bill's been moved by Senator Smallwood Cuevas. The motion is due pass the Labor Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Dodd,
Aye.
Dodd, I. Wilk,
Aye.
Wilk, I. Alvarado Gil, Archuleta,
Aye.
Archuleta, I. Ashby, Bradford, Glazer, Jones,
No.
Jones, no. Nguyen, Ochoa Bo,
No.
Ochoa Bo, no. Padilla,
Aye.
Padilla, I. Portantino, Portantino, I. Roth, Rubio, Sayardo, Smallwood Cuevas.
So that's 5-2. We'll put that bill on call. Now we're going to move to file item number 5. That's SB 1355. Senator Wahab.
Thank you. Well, I'm hoping this is a little bit of a lighter bill for you guys. So Chair Dodd, colleagues and members of the public, I'm here to represent or present SB 1355, which extends the eligibility of Medi-Cal benefits for in-home support services recipients to every 3 years instead of annually. This bill passed out of the Health Committee on a 10-0 vote. Every year, the most vulnerable of an already vulnerable population lose benefits because they did not submit their information on time, or they lack knowledge or access and assistance with an administrative process they may find intimidating and cumbersome, especially monolingual individuals, immigrants, and others, especially the aging population. Extending the eligibility period will ensure that the population who rely most on it will see fewer interruptions of their benefits and can focus on their health and families. Long-term care and aging experts agree that any changes in income for Medi-Cal beneficiaries on IHSS are too insignificant to warrant yearly applications. SB 1355 is modeled after existing law, which allows continuing Medi-Cal eligibility for children up to 5 years of age without conducting redeterminations during that period. Its use with other Medi-Cal populations has already proven it possible to conduct redeterminations without yearly applications by Medi-Cal beneficiaries on IHSS. I would like to introduce my witness, Kevin Aslanian, the Executive Director with the Coalition of California Welfare Rights Organizations, in due time, Chair.
Good morning, Kevin Aslan, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organizations. There's about 1 million IHHS recipients who have to do annual redetermination every year. And that basically, most of them are in fixed income, so there's no change in their income. And the government knows exactly what the COLA is. So this bill would say that you only do it once every 3 years. That would basically save at least $100 million every 3 years. I mean, and basically, Department of Healthcare Services has done an analysis of these redeterminations, and they did a survey. And in January of this year, over 100,000 families were cut off of Medi-Cal because they failed to meet the procedure requirements. They were eligible for Medi-Cal, but they met the bureaucratic requirements. And the survey showed that 64% of them never got the form to send it in. and 42% of them send the forms in, got lost. 35% of them called up the call center to try to work it out, and they got hung up on. And this primarily affects Hispanics. So we urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to testify in support of this bill, please come forward now. Anybody wishing to testify against this bill, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll turn back to the committee. Any discussion?
Move
Senator
the bill
Alvarado?
when appropriate.
All right, so we have a motion by Senator Alvarado Gill. Anybody else wishing to address? Seeing none, the motion is due pass to Appropriations Committee. Would you like to close? Senator Wahab?
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Perfect. Secretary, please call the roll.
Dodd,
Aye.
Dodd, I, Wilk.
Aye.
Wilk, I, Alvarado Gill.
Aye.
Alvarado Gill, I, Archuleta. Ashby, Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, I, Glazer. Jones. Jones, I. Nguyen. Ochoa Bo.
Aye.
Ochoa Bo, I. Padilla.
Aye.
Padilla, I. Portantino. Portantino, I. Roth. Rubio. Sayardo. Smallwood Cuevas.
Bill has 8 votes. We'll put that bill on call. Thank you, Senator Wahab. At long last, we have Senator Becker, who has been so patient and yielded his spot. And now you're up. It's file item number 3. That's SB 942.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, I'm here to present SB 942. This is the California Artificial Intelligence Transparency Act. The bill takes a bold first step to addressing the proliferation of AI-generated content. As AI technology advances, the distinguishing between human and machine-generated content is becoming increasingly challenging. This ambiguity poses significant societal and democratic risks, exacerbating problems such as disinformation, harassment, and fraud. Recent deepfake incidents, such as fake videos of Taylor Swift, clone videos of President Biden, that just highlight how easily AI can manipulate images for harassment or political manipulation. This technology can also have a negative impact on our economy. When they had fake images of an explosion near the Pentagon went viral, it caused a economic market instability. Fraudsters can also exploit AI-generated technology for mimicking loved ones' voices. So this happened in San Francisco, where a family got a call, thought it was from their son, talking about how he'd been in an accident. It was his voice. And then he said he was going to get a call from the lawyers. They wired money for bail, $25,000. Turned out it wasn't him at all. Someone had cloned his voice, called the family, and they did not know. So clearly transparency is needed here. This is moving very quickly, and we're kind of in the petri dish early stages of all this. The EU has taken certain steps to act. Their AI Act mandates transparency standards, including requirement to inform users when they're interacting with an AI system. And to clearly mark synthetic audio, video, text, and images as artificially generated or manipulated, both for users and in a machine-readable format. That's what the EU is doing. SB 942 serves to address the growing uncertainty surrounding AI-generated content by requiring large Gen AI system providers to do 3 things. Number 1, label AI-generated content with visible and imperceptible embedded disclosures. 2, supply an AI detection tool for users to query whether content was created by AI. And 3rd, enforce third-party licensees to the extent technically feasible to prevent undisclosed content publication. This bill serves to address the challenges posed by AI-generated content, promoting transparency, accountable, and trust in the digital landscape. I'd say we're actively collaborating with industry and with opposition to address concerns, again, acknowledging this is all moving very quickly. And so we're working with them to try to strike the right balance in regulating generative AI for the benefit of all Californians. Now, I'm joined today, I have one witness, Tom Kemp, who's an entrepreneur, founded a leading cybersecurity company that was an early adopter of AI technology to detect cyber attacks, and recently published a book exploring the guardrails needed for AI. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Dodd and committee members. In 2021, Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai said this: "I view AI as the most profound technology that humanity will ever develop and work on. If you think about fire, electricity, or the internet, it's like that. But I think it's even more profound. But if AI is as profound as he claims, then it should be held to the same standards of honesty and transparency as a pack of gum. Now, we've had food labeling laws dating back to 1906. These laws not only require standardized disclosures, but also prohibit false or misleading branding. California even passed its own food labeling law in 1939. But here we are in 2024. And so here we have a pack of gum that has clear labeling on the back. It has a barcode, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to tell whether content is human generated or machine generated by AI, i.e. synthetic. Californians deserve to know whether the videos, photos, and content they see and read online are real. SB 942 addresses this problem. It simply says a provider must label its content and provide a way for a consumer to ask, hey, did you create this? So a few key points. First, the bill does not mention the word watermarking at all, nor is it prescriptive in how a provider labels AI. So that gives time for standards to merge, but we can still have a solution today. Second, it does not require providers to detect other platforms' AI content, just its own. And third, if you ask ChatGPT, it says, hey, we don't have an AI detection tool, so it's not redundant that this bill asks for this. In summary, this bill puts AI content on the same level as a pack of gum in terms of disclosures, which is the transparency that Californians need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify in support of this bill, please come forward. Seeing none, anybody wishing to testify against this bill, please come forward now. Morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Dylan Hoffman on behalf of TechNet, respectfully opposed to SB 942. We fully agree with the intent of SB 942 to create greater trust in user-generated content online by fostering the adoption of content provenance verifications and watermarks. As the Senator alluded, we are in collaboration with the author's office. We're working to provide substantive amendments and suggestions, and work collaboratively with him and his staff. However, just speaking of the bill as it's in print today, presents a multitude of issues and requires platforms to comply with some technically infeasible and some impossible standards. First, while we understand the desire to regulate an emerging technology, this is an area where that would benefit from federal standards and regulation rather than a state-by-state approach. I feel like I have to say that. I understand the need and desire for states to move forward, though, in trying to regulate this space, and we hope to be helpful partners in that. Many of our companies and platforms are at the forefront of developing content provenance and watermarking technology, which is still in its early stages. However, SB 942 has requirements for a technology that's still under development and rapidly developing. For example, there isn't a system that can watermark text, making the bill's requirements to do so impossible to comply with. Furthermore, content provenance and watermarking is still incredibly unreliable and in many cases very easy to break. Researchers at the University of Maryland were able to break all the currently available watermarking methods. Some can be avoided by simple cropping, resizing, or screenshotting of an image. More concerning, these researchers were able to insert fake watermarks and credentials into images, creating false positives. So in our view, any bill on this topic should account for this unreliability. Otherwise, I think we risk jeopardizing consumer trust. If laws exceed the industry's technological capabilities, we're concerned that consumers might place too much trust and credence in watermarks, making them more susceptible to bad actors' attempts to deceive. And finally, just to very quickly distinguish between a pack of gum and I think the technology here at issue, a pack of gum is not protected by the First Amendment, whereas some of the speech is. And I think the way that we either preference or stigmatize certain speech is concerning. And that's why we want to get this right, is to make sure that we fall very clearly under that. And as I mentioned previously, very much look forward to collaborating with the author and as this bill moves forwards. At this time, respectfully opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to testify against? Morning.
Ben Golombek with Cal Chamber, just associate our comments with TechNet and appreciate the author continuing to work with us.
Okay, we'll bring this back to the committee. Anybody have any questions or comments? Senator Padilla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the author for your thoughtful approach on this. And very supportive of the bill. I have some similar pieces myself that deal with consumer protection. And, you know, given the evolution and the application of this technology and how pervasive it is and how integrated it is, the only tools that consumers are left with is information and other sophisticated tools to at least give them some sense of either the authenticity of the source or the authenticity of the product. And given the complexities here, you have to try to, in my view, approach this with any tool available. It's sort of, I remember the argument, and I'm sensitive to the industry concerns. At the same time, it kind of reminds me of the old adage, you know, somebody said there wasn't enough lifeboats on the Titanic to save everyone, so we should think about something other than lifeboats. I think that we really need to think about whatever tools are available as we try to keep pace with this emerging technology. I appreciate the author's work. Happy to move the bill at the right time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Senator Jones.
Thank you. Senator Beck, I'm really torn on this. And so I'm going to raise some concerns maybe and just kind of, some of them are concerns about the bill and the technology. You know, I do want to acknowledge my staff real quick as she was reading through this, recognize that, you know, almost 90 years ago, we had our first incident. I think well known of this was the Orson Welles presentation of War of the Worlds, when the, you know, public was starting to freak out thinking that was a real news item. So on to your bill specifically, and you might want to address the opposition and the support because they both mentioned watermarks, and now I'm confused on that issue. Is it in there or is it not in there? But the questions I have is, okay, what's the limit? Where's the line on this? Is an app like Facetune or a filter like Snapchat, you know, covered under this? And if it is or isn't, you know, what do we do about that? This is such a broad issue. It's obviously global. You know, we should need a federal solution to this rather than 50 different states tackling this. And so I guess those would be, I have some other concerns, but I'm trying to get there on this. I recognize we got to do something, but sometimes something's better isn't better than nothing. So just kind of walk me through those couple of things and see where we get.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, and I do appreciate what was raised by the opposition. And again, we are working with them, working with industry. This bill does not specifically mention watermarks. I think there might be confusion with it. There's another bill in the assembly that does specifically mention watermarks. This one does not. It says there has to be disclosure, but the bill does not dictate what that standard is. So I think we're continuing to work. I understand what they say, the limitations for text and some of the difficulties with text. And again, this is rapidly evolving. So I think we're trying to, again, address it in a way. It has to be implementable, right? And to your point, it has to be better than nothing. So if it's a standard that's too easy, you know, faked or whatever, then it's not going to be helpful. I see Tom, is it okay to have my witness have a quick come through the chair?
Yeah, we really tried hard in this bill not to be prescriptive and actually dictate what the disclosure is, right? And so we explicitly do not mention technical implementations such as watermarking, and the opposition raised excellent points. We simply say, look, there just needs to be some form of disclosure, and then we ask the government technology department to review the standards that are emerging and then make actually recommendations every 2 years. So we wanted to have an on-ramp if a federal standard, but I think as we all know, if we're still waiting for a federal privacy law and it's been 30 years, et cetera. So some of these standards just probably won't come about anytime soon. And the good news is that actually all the large technology players have actually said that they would do disclosures as well. So this is kind of just confirming exactly what they do, and they're moving ahead without any specific standards, et cetera. And so this just simply just puts it into law and sets a high enough threshold for the entities that, for the larger generators of AI, just to put the equivalent of a food label on the actual content that they create. Thank you.
Yes, it will. Okay. Thank you, Senator Becker. I'd like to acknowledge some of the concerns raised by the opposition particularly regarding the ability to detect AI generated text. I understand you've said that here, that you're continuing to work with the opposition. I would urge you to do that obviously in the future. And again, as chair of GO, I've seen a number of AI bills in this committee, some of my own, some of the other members of the committee. It's important that we continue to innovate while remaining cognizant of the threats of these new technologies pose. Detection of AI generated content, particularly photos and videos, and their ability to spread information is one of the greatest threats this technology poses. With that, Senator, would you like to close?
Yes, and thank you, Chair. I do appreciate your leadership on this. Giving the first speech on the floor that was AI generated. I remember that well. But yeah, I know we're all. Many of us are I know many of us are working on this issue, and I certainly will continue to work with industry and with the opposition. We want to come up with something that again protects consumers, but doesn't stifle the industry and is a step forward.
Yeah, as much as I hate this when I have somebody close, maybe I didn't look to the right, but
I'm going to keep it very brief, very brief.
Bill.
And this is actually to your benefit, Senator Becker. So my message is really to the opposition that, I believe I am fair in evaluating opposition and support for every bill that comes in front of me. However, the letter that was submitted by TechNet and Cal Chamber was not in regard to your bill. It was in regard to Senate Bill 942 Wicks, which confused me. And in reading the letter, it also says SB 94 Becker. So I am confused with the opposition, and I'm going to support your bill where before I had questions. So just a note to anyone who submits letters, please help us do our jobs by giving us the complete information. Thank you, Senator Becker.
The ultimate close.
Yes.
Okay. The motion is due pass to Appropriations Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Dodd,
Aye.
Dodd, I, Wilk. Alvarado Gill,
Aye.
Alvarado Gill, I, Archuleta, Ashby, Bradford, Bradford, I, Glazer, Jones, Nguyen, Ochoa Bo,
Not voting.
Padilla, Padilla, I, Portantino, Portantino, I, Roth, Rubio, Sayardo, Smallwood Cuevas.
Bill has 5 votes. We'll leave that on call. Thank you very much, Senator Becker. At this point, we're going to move on to file item number 8, SB 1107. I'm going to turn the committee over in the middle. Come on up, Senator Durazo. Probably in the middle of this to somebody here, which we'll decide in a minute. Oh, Senator Jones, would you do that?
I'll be happy to back you up.
So good morning. Thank you, Senator Durazo.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 1107 will provide an option for unhoused Californians to receive and pick up their government-related mail at a county Department of Social Services office. Currently, government agencies rely on the U.S. Postal Service to deliver important mail to Californians who don't have a reliable mailing address through general delivery. This free service provides access to mail delivered to a local post office. However, general delivery varies from county to county. For example, San Francisco, there's one general delivery for the entire city and county. As an alternative, Californians without a permanent address have also relied on receiving their mail at county social services offices in counties such as San Bernardino, Los Angeles, and Sacramento. They can also receive mail at shelters, nonprofits, and friends or families. Californians who receive public benefits receive notices and access of these services through the mail, including the EBT cards, recertification of public benefits, and notices of housing programs. The notices often require people to respond in a timely manner. If not, their benefits or services could be interrupted or cut off. Without the impacts of not having a reliable mailing address are detrimental to these Californians. And so without set standards that expand access to receiving mail, the shortcoming can potentially impact tens of thousands of unhoused Californians. With me to testify today is Christopher Sanchez, one of our sponsors with the Western Center on Law and Poverty. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Christopher Sanchez with the Mesa Verde Group, representing the Western Center on Law and Poverty, here in strong support of SB 1107. For decades, Californians have relied on delivery of mail through the United States Postal Service, which up until recently was a reliable service to send and receive mail. Unfortunately, in recent years, the post office has significantly changed for many reasons, but as a result has pulled back services that were readily available to all Californians, including services specifically tailored to those who are unhoused by providing free PO box services, also known as general delivery. The reality today is that those services are very limited, and in many cases no longer available. Last year, the Western Center on Law and Poverty published a report showing how Californians without a mailing address are disenfranchised, especially those trying to access public benefits. 1107 provides an additional option for unhoused Californians to access critical social services because our social service programs still rely on mail. You can't receive an ID, an EBT card without having access to mail. You can't receive a letter to be on a housing waiting list or access to a housing program without access to mail. And the list goes on. For these reasons, we urge your aye vote.
Thank you. Are there any other witnesses in support?
Annie Chow with the California Teachers Association in support.
Thank you.
Abby Alvarez with Nourish California in support.
Kevin Aslan, Coalition California Welfare Rights Organization, strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support to add on in their support of this bill? Seeing no other witnesses in support, any opposition to SB 1107? Other witnesses that might be in opposition can begin to line up in the aisle there. Go ahead.
Good morning. Amanda Kirchner on behalf of the County Welfare Directors Association. We do appreciate the intent of this bill, but unfortunately our counties are opposed. Currently, some of our counties are able to help our unhoused clients because they are known to us and they are a part of our county services. And so we are able to keep mail for them, or more likely what it is we reprint for them any of the notices that we've actually sent to them. So if someone comes in, they come to our intake office and we are able to reprint for them anything that we've sent out so that they can have it on hand. Some counties do try and additionally take in other forms of mail if it's known to them that it's coming, but not all of our counties provide that service. So to expand this to all of our counties to do that, we do feel is going to be quite a burdensome undertaking for our counties and costly. There will be significant workload issues, not just in storing, but also creating the infrastructure to hold on to that mail and then to send anything back to the post office that isn't part of the government mail that's been identified that we should be keeping. And so we're just happy to continue to work with the author's office, see if we can get to a middle ground on this. But for those reasons, we are opposed.
Thank you. Second witness in opposition.
Kelly Brooks on behalf of the urban counties of California and the rural county representatives of California. We are also opposed and would just align our comments with CWDA. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in opposition? Seeing no other witnesses in opposition, discussion from the dais. Senator Alvarado.
Senator Durazo, I know we saw you in Human Services, and I just wanted to know what work has been done between the last committee and this committee with opposition to kind of come to a common ground.
Well, do you want to talk about that, Chris?
We'll take the witness in support.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Apologize, ma'am, if you can repeat the question.
Yes, so we saw you in Human Services Committee, and there were some concerns from opposition. And my question is, what work has been done with the opposition to kind of come to a middle ground?
Unfortunately, at this time, we haven't had a chance to sit with the opposition. I think we are looking to sit with them again to hear more of the concerns. We haven't received any feedback based on the new language that's in print today.
Any other comments from members?
I just wanted to thank the author for the bill, and it is a shame that we have to provide this level of service, but this is just where our economy has left some folks way behind, where even receiving mail requires support and assistance. So I'm happy to move the bill when it's time. It's necessary and it's
Great.
needed.
Thank you. We have a motion on SB 1107. Any other comments from the dais? Senator Durazo, would you like to close?
Yes, I just want to say that counties like San Bernardino, Los Angeles, and Sacramento, as diverse as those counties are providing an option. And I would urge every county to do the same, follow, and I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Durazo. We have a motion by Senator Smallwood Cuevas on SB 1107. The motion is due pass to Appropriations Committee. Secretary, we're ready to call the roll.
Dodd, Wilk, Alvarado Gil, Archuleta, Ashby, Bradford, Bradford I, Glazer, Jones,
Aye.
Jones I, Nguyen, Ochoa Bo, Padilla, Portantino, Portantino I, Roth, Rubio, Sayardo, Smallwood Cuevas.
Aye.
Smallwood Cuevas, aye.
Thank you.
That has 4 aye votes. As we can see, many members are in other committees right now, so we'll put it on call for the end of the session today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take, we don't have any senators waiting to present, so we're going to take members from the dais. We're going to take Senator Bradford's SB 1403, which is file item 20. Senator Bradford will be presenting. Senator Bradford. Again, for the public, we're on file item 20, Senate Bill 1403, Senator Bradford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 1403 would establish the California's American Freedmen Affairs Agency for the purpose of implementation, oversight, and monitoring of policies and laws enacted related to reparations. It would also require the agency to oversee and monitor existing state agencies and departments tasked with engaging in direct implementation of reparations policies. This bill was the recommendation of the California Reparations Task Force, which I spent 2 years of my life being a part of, and it's one of the most essential of the report's 115 recommendations. This agency will be necessary foundation for the implementation and success of reparations. Most important responsibilities of this agency will have is determining individuals which are eligible for reparation programs and services that the legislature enacts. Eligible individuals are descendants of chattel slaves of African Americans in the United States, or descendants of free Black persons living in the United States prior to the end of the 19th century. SB 1403 will create a genealogical office of research and confirm reparations eligibility, expedite assistance with reparations claims process. And many people ask, why California? Why should we be responsible for reparations at all? Well, in no way does this excuse the federal government and our local governments from taking action. California still bears some real responsibility here. The state government permitted and committed grave injustices against African Americans. These injustices include enslavement, legal, public, and private segregation, discrimination in state funding and programming, and stigmatization. This agency is the first step in California, stigmatizing, I should say, California can take in righting these wrongs. 1403 is about demonstrating our state's commitment to not only recognizing the past, but also taking meaningful actions toward an equitable future. And I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. We'll now take witnesses in support of Senate Bill 1403. Are there any witnesses in support?
Mr. Chair and Senators, Adam Keglin on behalf of City of Los Angeles in support.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? If you're a witness in support, now would be the time to be lining up to share your support. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning. My name is Darlene Crumity, a member of the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, as well as American Redress Coalition of California, Arc Bay Area. I am in total support at SB 1403. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Good morning. Kim Mims with the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, CJAC, American Redress Coalition of California, ARC, Sacramento branch, and Amend the Mass Media in full and total support of SB 1403. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Seeing no other witnesses in support, are there any witnesses in opposition to Senate Bill 1403? Seeing no one making their way to the microphone, conversation from the dais. Members, Senator Smallwood-Davis.
I want to thank the author for bringing this important piece of legislation, but also his leadership on this issue for so many years, both on the task force, but as a member educating not just our community, but our legislature on this issue. As a member of the Black Caucus, I absolutely want to move this bill when the time is right. But I also want to say how important it is for us to address reparations in California for California. Slavery is the economic foundation of our country, and in many ways, California benefited from it tremendously. And that foundation, because of the racial terror, because of the disenfranchisement, because of the intergenerational violence, our foundation is deeply cracked. And I see reparations as a way of repairing the foundation, which makes our state stronger and will lift all of us in the process. So I want to say this is sacred work, and this is an important piece of legislation. And I'm grateful to be in the legislature at this time where we are positioning our state for a different and brighter future for next generations. Reparations is all about a life where we make amends for what the harms that have been done, and we have the opportunity to lean into a freer future for all of us. So I want to say thank you again to the author, and I look forward to supporting the bill when the time is right.
Any other comments from the dais? I will take that as the motion then from Senator Smallwood-Davis. Senator Bradford, would you like to close?
Thank you, and I appreciate the comments by my colleague from Los Angeles. And this is an issue that California should face up to and accept. And many times they say, why California? California was not a slave state, but in name only. It practiced everything that a slave state did. If you were brought here as a slave, you were treated as a slave. If you gave birth here as California, your child was born as a slave. We had a fugitive slave law. So if you ran away from one of those slave states, you were returned by bounty hunters. So, and our first governor, we must understand that, Peter Burnett, owned slaves in this state. So we were a slave state in practice. This is not charity. What we're trying to do with this Freedmen agency is going to be a way of standing up, same way we did for our Native American brothers and sisters with the tribal affairs, to make sure that they were justly compensated and taken care of for the wrongs that happened to them. This is following that same model, and I respectfully ask for I vote.
Thank you, Senator Bradford. We are ready for, the motion is due pass to Appropriations Committee. Secretary, please call the roll.
Dodd, Wilk, Alvarado Gil,
Aye.
Alvarado Gil, aye. Archuleta,
Check my note. Aye.
Archuleta, aye. Ashby, Bradford,
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Glazer, Jones, Nguyen, Ochoa Bo, Padilla, Portantino, Portantino, aye. Roth, Rubio, Sayardo, Smallwood Cuevas. Smallwood Cuevas, aye. It's 5.
That bill has 5 aye votes. We'll put it on call for the other members to get here. Next, we're going to take up Senate Bill 1114, Senator Nilo. This is file item 9 on our file today. Senator Nilo is presenting file item 9, Senate Bill 1114. Senator Nilo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I can see by the population of the dais that everybody here is running around quite a bit today.
Actually, Senator, they're off goofing off.
for those of you who don't know, that's what I said Senator Wilk was doing when I presented his bill yesterday. But I quickly modified that statement to say that he had unavoidable conflicts during the day.
Then I'm not going to say that about my colleagues here.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to present SB 1114, which would require each state agency, department, office, or entity to clearly post their budgets on their respective internet home pages. First of all, let me begin by I do accept the committee amendments. The state of California mandates significant disclosure requirements in election, financial, insurance, real estate, and other laws in an effort to promote transparency, regulate conduct, and to ensure informed consent. These disclosures, while mostly well intended to serve the public's interest, add complexity and expense to conducting business in California on other entities. Conversely, while the state requires numerous persons, organizations, and businesses to disclose information in the public's interest, information concerning the size, expense, and growth of state government is not easily and readily available to the casual or intermittent consumer of state services. Websites of state agencies, departments, offices provide extensive information about services available to citizens or requirements citizens must meet in obtaining licenses or performing other functions, yet the actual size, cost, and growth of those entities are masked from Californians in obscure, difficult to understand budget documents for which most Californians would never see or look for. While we do have the Department of Finance website, it is not easy to navigate and something most citizens do not even know about, so would never even think to visit the site. Also, when you consider many of these agencies are license fee funded, it makes sense that those license paying individuals or entities be able to track.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but free people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations.
I had no idea that church I was running by every day was something my grandfather established.
This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million. And then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California with a multi-billion-dollar surplus can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Overnight, it's like, oh, it's no longer the quarters, now it's Lincoln Heights. Oh, so now we get to use Abraham Lincoln for our name. And you think about all the other people that they could have used, but they picked Lincoln. And I think that's sort of stereotypical of what they do.
There wasn't any black restaurants. As far as black business and weed, it wasn't none.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Why has it been easier for other groups than us?
Because of anti-black hatred.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR room, don't tune in.
Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in Life Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.
Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in Life Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.